Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. Dr. Naira Vendel stared at the holographic display of Valaxi Prime, trying to process Commander Orlan's words. "You want me to study a species that could kill me with a touch?" she asked, her voice remarkably steady considering the circumstances. "That's precisely why we need you, Doctor," said Commander Orlan, his weathered face serious beneath the harsh lights of the briefing room. "The Valaxi have requested a human xenobiologist. Your research on cross-species biological compatibility is unparalleled." Naira ran a hand through her short, auburn hair. After 15 years of studying alien biology throughout the galaxy, she'd encountered dangerous species before, but never one whose mere touch was lethal to humans. "The Valaxi secrete a compound through their skin that's neurotoxic to humans," she murmured, reviewing the sparse data they had. "Yet they're requesting human scientific collaboration." "Diplomatic relations are evolving," Orlan replied carefully. "The Valaxi Federation controls 3 star systems rich in quadrinium. The Alliance needs this partnership." Politics. It always came down to politics and resources. Naira suppressed a sigh. "What exactly am I looking for on Valaxi Prime?" she asked. Orlan's gaze softened slightly. "The Valaxi are experiencing a reproductive crisis. Their birth rates have plummeted over the past 50 years. They believe human medical science might offer insights. And if I refuse? Then I'll find another xenobiologist, though none with your qualifications." Orlan's tone made it clear this wasn't truly a request. The space station's artificial gravity seemed heavier as Naira considered the assignment. 6 months on a planet where the dominant species could kill her accidentally. Where she'd need to maintain constant vigilance just to stay alive. "I'll need specialized equipment," she said finally. "Full biohazard protocols, remote sampling tools, and at least 2 AI assistants." Orlan nodded, relief evident in his posture. "Of course. Whatever you need." 3 days later, Naira stood in the loading bay, watching as the crew loaded her equipment onto the transport ship. The vessel, named Horizon's Reach, would be her home for the 2-week journey to Valaxi Prime. "Dar. Vandel?" A voice called from behind her. She turned to see a tall woman in a pristine Federation uniform approaching. "I'm Captain Brielle Mercer," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'll be commanding your transport to Valaxi Prime." Naira shook her hand, noting the firm grip. "Nice to meet you, Captain. Is everything on schedule?" "Yes, we launch in 2 hours. Your quarters are prepared, and we've installed the specialized air filtration system you requested." Captain Mercer's expression turned serious. "I should warn you, Doctor. I've transported diplomats to Valaxi Prime before. Their society is rigid. Protocol means everything to them." "I'll keep that in mind," Naira replied. "There's one more thing," Mercer added. "The Valaxi have assigned one of their own to work with you directly, Commander Javik. He's their leading biological researcher." Naira felt her stomach tighten. "I thought I would be working independently." The Valaxi were insistent. "Commander Javik has apparently been studying human biology for years. He's developed special protective measures to work safely with you." After Captain Mercer left, Naira retreated to her temporary quarters to review her data tablets. The information on the Valaxi was frustratingly limited. They were a humanoid species with iridescent blue-green skin that secreted a compound toxic to humans and several other species. Their internal physiology was remarkably similar to humans, with comparable respiratory and circulatory systems, despite evolving on a planet with higher oxygen content. When Naira boarded the Horizon's Reach, she felt a mixture of scientific curiosity and apprehension. Her personal quarters were spacious, with a small laboratory attached, a luxury on a transport vessel. As the ship departed from the station, Naira watched through the viewport as the massive structure receded into the distance, stars stretching into bright lines as they jumped to hyperspace. "Computer," she said after a moment, display all available information on Commander Javik of the Valaxi. The screen flickered to life, showing a tall, slender figure with distinctive blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer under light. Javik's features were angular, with large, dark eyes that contained flecks of gold. Like all Valaxi, he had no visible hair, but a series of raised ridges along his scalp. Commander Javik, the computer's voice intoned, is the head of the Valaxi Biological Research Division. He has authored 17 papers on comparative xenobiology and is considered the foremost expert on human-Valaxi biological interactions. Naira studied his image. There was something in those alien eyes, intelligence, certainly, but also something she couldn't quite identify. Curiosity? Intensity? Whatever it was, she had the unsettling feeling that this assignment would change her life in ways she couldn't possibly anticipate. As the horizon's reach carried her toward Valaxi Prime, Dr. Naira Vendel prepared herself for the most dangerous and challenging mission of her career, one where even the slightest mistake could mean her death. The journey to Valaxi Prime took 13 days in hyperspace. Naira spent most of that time reviewing what little information they had on Valaxi physiology and preparing her research protocols. On the final day, Captain Mercer summoned her to the bridge. "We're approaching Valaxi space," she explained, gesturing to the view screen. "I thought you might want to see the planet as we approach." The ship exited hyperspace with a subtle shift, and Valaxi Prime appeared before them, a swirling marble of deep blues and vivid greens, with two small moons orbiting closely. Unlike Earth with its continental land masses, Valaxi Prime's surface was dominated by archipelagos scattered across vast oceans. "It's beautiful," Naira murmured. "The Valaxi evolved in a primarily aquatic environment," Mercer explained. "Their major cities are built on the larger island chains, but many of their scientific facilities are underwater." A light flashed on the communications console. "Incoming transmission from Valaxi Control," announced the communications officer. A moment later, the view screen changed to show a Valaxi officer. His skin had a deeper blue tone than Commander Javik's image, with faint luminescent patterns visible along his neck. "Captain Mercer," the Valaxi officer said, his voice carrying a melodic quality that the translator couldn't quite mask. "We welcome the Horizon's reach to Valaxi space. Please proceed to the coordinates we are transmitting for atmospheric entry." "Acknowledged, Valaxi Control. We have Dr. Vandel aboard as scheduled." The Valaxi's gaze shifted to Naira. "Dr. Vandel, I am Subcommander Ravik. Commander Javik has prepared the research facility for your arrival. We have implemented all the safety protocols requested by your Federation." "Thank you, Subcommander," Naira replied, trying to project confidence. "I look forward to beginning our collaborative work." After the transmission ended, Captain Mercer turned to her. "You should prepare for landing. The Valaxi atmosphere is breathable for humans, but it's more oxygen-rich than you're used to. You might feel lightheaded at first." 2 hours later, the Horizon's reach descended through Valaxi Prime's atmosphere. Naira watched from her viewport as they approached a massive island that seemed to be mostly covered by a single city. Sleek, curved structures of a material resembling mother-of-pearl rose from the landscape, connected by transparent tubes that glowed with internal light. The landing was smooth, and Naira gathered her personal belongings. Her scientific equipment would be transported separately to the research facility. She donned the special protective suit designed for this mission, a lightweight, skin-tight garment that covered her from neck to feet, designed to prevent any accidental contact with Valaxi skin. Captain Mercer met her at the airlock. "Ready, Doctor." "As ready as I'll ever be," Naira replied, forcing a smile. The airlock cycled open, and Naira took her first breath of Valaxi air. It was rich and slightly sweet, with hints of something like cinnamon. As predicted, the higher oxygen content made her feel momentarily dizzy before her body adjusted. A delegation waited at the bottom of the boarding ramp, 3 Valaxi, each wearing what appeared to be formal attire, fitted garments in deep blues and purples that complemented their skin tones. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. "Dar. Naira Vandel," he said, inclining his head in what she recognized as the Valaxi gesture of respect. I am Commander Javik. Welcome to Valaxi Prime. In person, Javik was even more striking than his image. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, his blue-green skin had subtle patterns that seemed to shift with his movements. The ridges along his scalp were more pronounced than she'd expected, with faint golden highlights that matched the flecks in his dark eyes. Commander Javik, she replied, returning the head inclination carefully. Thank you for your welcome. I'm eager to begin our work together. These are my research associates, Javik continued, gesturing to the others. Dr. Lysandra and Dr. Tevik. They will assist us in the laboratory. Naira noted that unlike Javik, whose English was flawless if slightly accented, the other scientists wore translator devices at their throats. We have prepared quarters for you adjacent to the research facility, Javik continued. A sealed environment with human standard atmospheric composition, though you'll find our natural atmosphere perfectly breathable. I appreciate the consideration, Naira said. As they walked from the landing pad toward a waiting transport vehicle, Naira noticed how the Valaxi maintained careful distance from her, at least 3 feet at all times. The knowledge that their touch could kill her hung unspoken between them. The transport glided silently through the city, giving Naira her first close look at Valaxi architecture. Buildings seemed to grow organically from the ground, with flowing lines and few sharp angles. Many structures featured water elements, cascading falls or reflecting pools integrated into their design. Your city is remarkable, she commented. This is Zerilia, our scientific capital, Javik explained. Each of our island cities has a primary function. Zerilia has been a center of learning for over 2,000 years. Your species has a long history of scientific inquiry, then. Indeed. The Valaxi have always sought to understand the universe through observation and experimentation. He paused, studying her. Much like humans, though our methods sometimes differ. The transport turned onto a causeway that extended over water, heading toward what appeared to be a separate small island dominated by a complex of pearlescent buildings. That is the Xenobiological Research Institute, Javik said, following her gaze. You're home for the next 6 months. As they approached, Naira felt a mixture of professional excitement and personal trepidation. She was about to embark on groundbreaking research with a species fundamentally dangerous to her own existence. One careless moment could end her life. The transport slowed to a stop before the main entrance of the institute. As they disembarked, Javik turned to her. Dr. Vandel, he said, his voice lower, I want you to know that I understand the risk you're taking by coming here. I give you my word that your safety is my highest priority. Naira met his alien gaze and saw sincerity there. Thank you, Commander. Please, when we're working together, call me Javik. Then you must call me Naira. He inclined his head again. Naira. Come, let me show you the laboratory we've prepared. As she followed him into the institute, Naira couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment would be unlike any she had undertaken before, not just because of the danger, but because of the enigmatic Valaxi commander who would be her research partner for the months ahead. The Xenobiological Research Institute was even more impressive inside than out. Corridors curved gently, lined with what appeared to be living material that emitted a soft, ambient light. The air was perfectly climate-controlled, though Naira noticed subtle differences from human standards, slightly warmer, more humid. The institute was founded 3 centuries ago, Javik explained as they walked. Initially to study the indigenous marine life of our world, but our focus expanded to other planets after first contact with the Andorian species. How many alien species have you studied here? Naira asked. 17 distinct sentient species, and countless non-sentient organisms, Javik replied. Humans are among the most physiologically compatible with Valaxi in terms of basic biology, save for our unfortunate toxicity to your kind. They reached a set of large doors that slid open silently at their approach. Beyond lay a spacious laboratory unlike any Naira had seen before. The room was circular, with workstations arranged around a central platform. Equipment that appeared both familiar and alien occupied various sections of the space. "This will be our primary workspace," Javik said. "We've adapted it to accommodate both Valaxi and human researchers safely." Naira noticed transparent barriers that could be activated between various sections, containment units with specialized seals, and robotic manipulators for handling dangerous materials. "You've thought of everything," she commented, genuinely impressed. "Safety is paramount," Javik responded. "Especially given the nature of our research." Dr. Lysandra stepped forward, her translator activating. "We've installed the equipment you requested, Dr. Vandel. Your sampling devices and analysis tools arrived yesterday." "Thank you," Naira said. "And my AI assistants?" "Fully integrated with our systems," Dr. Tevik assured her. "They're running diagnostics now to ensure compatibility." Javik gestured toward one side of the laboratory. "This area is specifically designed for your use. The air is separately filtered, and all surfaces are treated with a neutralizing compound that breaks down any Valaxi biological material." As Naira explored her workspace, she noted the attention to detail, emergency protocols clearly displayed, decontamination chambers at strategic locations, and multiple communication systems. "I'd like to show you your living quarters next," Javik said after giving her time to familiarize herself with the lab. They connect directly to this laboratory through a sealed corridor. The quarters turned out to be a surprisingly spacious suite, a bedroom, living area, small kitchen, and bathroom, all designed with human aesthetics in mind. "We consulted with human architectural databases to create a comfortable environment," Javik explained. "The water is filtered to human standards, and the food synthesizer is programmed with Earth cuisines." "This is far more luxurious than I expected," Naira admitted, touching the soft fabric of a chair that resembled Earth textiles. "You'll be here for 6 months," Javik said simply. "Comfort will aid productivity." After settling in, Naira returned to the laboratory where Javik waited to brief her on their research. "As you know," he began, activating a holographic display, "the Valaxi birth rate has declined by 68% over the past 5 decades. Despite extensive research, we haven't identified the cause." The display showed demographic charts, a clear downward trend in population growth across all Valaxi settlements. "What makes you think human science might help?" Naira asked, studying the data. "Humans have overcome similar reproductive challenges in your history," Javik replied. "And your approach to genetic research follows different paradigms than ours. Sometimes fresh perspectives reveal what we cannot see ourselves." He manipulated the display to show Valaxi physiological data. "Additionally, there are intriguing similarities between human and Valaxi reproductive systems that may provide insights." Naira examined the data, her scientific curiosity fully engaged. "I see the similarities. Your species reproduces sexually, with internal gestation like mammals on Earth." "Correct. Valaxi pregnancies typically last 14 Earth months, but successful conception has become increasingly rare." "Have you ruled out environmental factors? Pollutants? Radiation?" "Extensively," Javik confirmed. "We've also investigated nutritional, psychological, and sociological factors. All without conclusive results." Naira considered the problem. "I'll need to study Valaxi genetics in detail, comparing current genomes with historical samples if you have them." "We do," Javik said. "Dating back 500 years. "That's impressive," Naira remarked. "Earth lost much of its genetic archives during the climate wars. We were fortunate to avoid such devastation," Javik said quietly. "Though we've had our share of historical conflicts." As they continued discussing the research parameters, Naira found herself increasingly comfortable in Javik's presence despite the inherent danger he posed. His scientific mind was precise and thorough, his explanations clear. Despite being alien, there was something familiar in his methodical approach that reminded her of her best colleagues on Earth. Later that evening, after Javik and the other researchers had departed, Naira sat in her quarters reviewing the day's information. Her AI assistant, Dora, projected beside her desk. Dr. Vandel, I've completed initial analysis of the Valaxi reproductive data, Dora reported, her holographic form flickering slightly. There are several anomalies worth investigating further. Show me, Naira said, leaning forward. As Dora displayed the findings, Naira's mind worked through the implications. The challenge was intriguing from a scientific perspective, but she couldn't help wondering about the political dimensions. Why were the Valaxi so willing to share this sensitive information with humans? What weren't they telling her? A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, a message notification on her communication terminal. It was from Javik. Dr. Vandel, the message read, I hope you're settling in comfortably. I've scheduled a tour of our genomic archive for tomorrow morning. There's also a diplomatic reception tomorrow evening where your presence would be appreciated. The High Council wishes to formally welcome you to Valaxi Prime. Rest well. Naira stared at the message, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was after the journey and the day's activities. The diplomatic reception was unexpected, she hadn't packed anything appropriate for formal events. As if reading her mind, a second message arrived, Cultural Attaché Rayla will visit in the morning with suitable attire for the reception. Valaxi formal events have strict protocols regarding appearance. Naira smiled ruefully. Of course they did. Everything she'd learned about the Valaxi indicated a society bound by intricate rules and traditions. She would need to navigate those carefully while pursuing her research. As she prepared for sleep, Naira found herself thinking about Javik, his measured words, the intensity of his gaze when discussing their research, the careful distance he maintained at all times. Working alongside him would be a delicate dance of scientific collaboration and constant vigilance. Tomorrow would bring her first real immersion into Valaxi society. As she drifted toward sleep, Naira wondered what secrets awaited her in the genomic archives, and what unspoken agendas might lie behind this impossible assignment. Dawn broke over Zerilia in bands of purple and gold, casting the pearlescent buildings in ethereal light. Naira had risen early, partially due to lingering temporal disorientation and partially from eagerness to begin her work. She stood at the viewport in her quarters, watching as Valaxi citizens moved through the awakening city. From this distance, they appeared almost human, their height and build not so different from tall, slender people. But as they passed beneath the morning light, their skin shimmered with iridescent patterns that no human could possess, a constant reminder of their fundamental alienness. A gentle chime announced a visitor. Dr. Vandel, came the voice of the Institute's AI through the communication system. Cultural Attaché Rayla has arrived as scheduled. Please admit her, Naira responded, turning from the window. The door slid open to reveal a female Valaxi slightly shorter than Javik, with skin that leaned more toward teal than his blue-green. The ridges on her head were more delicate, adorned with what appeared to be metallic ornaments. Dr. Vandel, she said, inclining her head in greeting. I am Rayla. I hope I find you well rested after your journey. As well as can be expected, Naira replied with a smile. Please, come in. Rayla entered, maintaining the careful distance that Naira was beginning to recognize as standard Valaxi protocol for interacting with humans. She carried a large case, which she placed on the table in the living area. Commander Javik informed me of the diplomatic reception tonight, Rayla said. I've brought several formal garment options suitable for a human attending a Valaxi function. She opened the case to reveal several outfits in rich, deep colors. These have been specially treated to provide an additional layer of protection against accidental contact, she explained. Naira approached, examining the garments with interest. They were beautifully crafted, reminiscent of formal human attire but with distinctly alien aesthetic elements, asymmetrical designs and materials that seemed to shift color depending on the angle of light. They're beautiful, Naira commented sincerely. Beauty and function are equally valued in Valaxi design, Rayla responded, seeming pleased at Naira's appreciation. This one, she indicated a deep purple ensemble with silver accents, would complement your coloring while adhering to the status protocols for a visiting scientist. Status protocols? Naira inquired. Valaxi formal gatherings follow strict visual hierarchies, Rayla explained. Colors and patterns indicate one's position and role. As an honored scientific visitor, you should wear colors in the third spectrum tier with metallic accents indicating your specialized knowledge. Naira nodded, fascinated by this glimpse into Valaxi social structure. I appreciate your guidance. I wouldn't want to cause offense through ignorance. That is precisely why I am here, Rayla said with a gesture that Naira interpreted as the Valaxi equivalent of a smile, a slight lifting of facial ridges above her eyes. Commander Javik was most insistent that you be properly prepared for Valaxi social interactions. After Rayla departed, promising to return before the reception to assist with final preparations, Naira received a message that Javik was ready to escort her to the genomic archives. She found him waiting in the laboratory, studying something on a data pad. He looked up as she entered, those gold-flecked eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. Good morning, Naira, he said, using her first name as they had agreed. Did you rest adequately? I did, thank you, she replied. I'm eager to see the archives. They are one of our greatest scientific treasures, Javik said, his voice carrying a note of pride. Few non-Valaxi have ever been granted access. They took a transport from the institute, traveling along a causeway that curved over brilliant turquoise waters. In the distance, Naira could see structures beneath the surface, underwater extensions of the city. Much of our civilization exists below the waterline, Javik explained, following her gaze. Valaxi are semi-aquatic by nature. We can breathe underwater for extended periods. That explains the humidity levels in your buildings, Naira remarked. Yes, though we've adjusted them in the areas where you'll be working, Javik confirmed. Your comfort is important to the success of our collaboration. The transport descended into an underwater tunnel, transparent on all sides, giving Naira a spectacular view of Valaxi's marine environment. Schools of creatures that resembled a cross between Earth's rays and jellyfish glided past, their bodies pulsing with bioluminescent light. Magnificent, she breathed. We call them Lurin, Javik said. They were sacred in ancient Valaxi belief systems, thought to carry the souls of ancestors through the deep waters. Do many Valaxi still follow those beliefs? Some traditionalist communities maintain the old ways, he replied. Most modern Valaxi view them as beautiful cultural metaphors rather than literal truth. Not unlike humans and their varied religious traditions. The tunnel opened into a vast underwater complex, a dome of the same pearlescent material as the buildings above, but with a translucent quality that allowed diffuse blue light to filter through. The Ancestral Archive, Javik announced as they disembarked. Inside, the facility was a marvel of biological preservation technology. Circular chambers branched out from a central hub, each maintained its specific environmental conditions to preserve different types of samples. We've maintained continuous genetic records since before our industrial age, Javik explained as they moved through the facility. Initially through biological preservation methods, later through digital encoding, and now both simultaneously for redundancy. Earth scientists would be envious, Naira commented. We've had to reconstruct much of our genetic history from fragmented sources. They entered a chamber where cylindrical containers lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each glowing with soft blue light. These contain physical samples from approximately 8,000 Valaxi individuals spanning 5 centuries, Javik said. Complete genomic mapping exists for each. Naira approached one of the containers, studying the interface. The preservation technology is remarkable. It's one of our specialties, Javik agreed. Perhaps a technology we might share with humanity someday, if our alliance proves fruitful. There was something in his tone that caught Naira's attention, a hint of something personal behind the diplomatic phrasing. You seem particularly invested in human-Valaxi relations, she observed carefully. Javik was silent for a moment. I have studied humans extensively, he finally said. Your adaptability fascinates me. Valaxi tend toward stability, tradition. Humans embrace change, often thriving in it. Each approach has its advantages, Naira replied diplomatically. Indeed. Which is why collaboration between our species holds such promise. He gestured toward another chamber. Come. I'll show you the Comparative Analysis Center where you'll be working. The remainder of the day passed quickly as Javik introduced Naira to the archive systems and the Valaxi researchers who would assist her. By late afternoon, her mind was swimming with information and possibilities. You've given me enough data to keep me busy for years, not months, she remarked as they prepared to return to the institute. We are hopeful that your fresh perspective will identify patterns we've missed, Javik responded. The reproductive crisis threatens our long-term survival as a species. On the journey back, Naira found herself studying Javik's profile surreptitiously. Despite his alien features, she could read tension in his posture, a universal body language that transcended species differences. This crisis means a great deal to you personally, she observed. Javik turned to her, seeming momentarily surprised by her perception. It affects all Valaxi, he said carefully. But you especially, Naira pressed gently. I've worked with enough scientists to recognize when research is more than academic. For a long moment, Javik was silent, his gaze turning to the waters outside the transport. My younger sister and her mate have tried for 8 years to conceive, he finally said, his voice quieter. They are not alone in their struggle. An entire generation of Valaxi faces extinction if we cannot solve this puzzle. The raw emotion in his voice touched Naira unexpectedly. I'll do everything in my power to help, she promised. Javik's eyes met hers again, the golden flecks seeming to intensify. I believe you will, Naira Vandel. There is something about you that inspires confidence. When they reached the institute, Javik reminded her of the evening's reception. The diplomatic corps will send a transport at sunset. I will meet you there, I must attend to some preparations in advance. As Naira prepared for the reception with Rayla's assistance later that evening, she found herself thinking about Javik's momentary vulnerability. Beneath his composed scientific exterior was a personal stake in their research that humanized him in unexpected ways. She studied her reflection in the mirror as Rayla made final adjustments to the formal attire. The purple fabric complemented her auburn hair, and the silver accents caught the light with subtle brilliance. You wear our designs well, Rayla commented. Many will be curious about you tonight. You are the first human scientist invited to work directly with the High Council's research team. I'll try not to disappoint, Naira replied, a flutter of nervousness in her stomach at the realization of how politically significant her role might be. As the transport arrived to take her to the reception, Naira couldn't help but wonder what other layers of complexity awaited her in this assignment, and what unspoken expectations Javik and the Valaxi leadership might have for her research. The diplomatic reception was held in a floating pavilion anchored in the bay between two major islands. As Naira's transport approached, she caught her breath at the sight, a structure that seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with gentle bioluminescence that mirrored the rhythm of the waves beneath it. The Hall of Convergence, explained her transport attendant. Built 3 centuries ago to commemorate first contact with the Andorians. Inside, the pavilion was even more spectacular. The ceiling arched high above, refracting light in patterns that danced across the gathered dignitaries. Valaxi of various age groups mingled in what Naira recognized as carefully arranged social formations. Those with similar skin patterns and ridge configurations tended to cluster together. She spotted Javik immediately. Among the assembled Valaxi, he stood slightly apart, his posture straight, eyes scanning the crowd with what she now recognized as his characteristic intensity. When he saw her, something in his expression shifted, a subtle change that she couldn't quite interpret. He moved toward her with purpose, maintaining the customary distance as he inclined his head in greeting. Dr. Vandel. You adapt well to our formal aesthetics. Thanks to Rayla's guidance, Naira replied with a smile. This venue is extraordinary. It will be more so when you see it under the moon's light, Javik said. Come, there are many who wish to meet you. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions. Naira met members of the High Council, scientific directors from various institutes, and cultural representatives from different Valaxi communities. She noted the careful choreography of the interactions, the precise distances maintained, the formal patterns of speech, the subtle indicators of rank and position in their attire. "You're handling this remarkably well," Javik commented during a brief respite. "Many outsiders find Valaxi social protocols overwhelming." "I'm an anthropologist as well as a biologist," Naira reminded him. "Observing social structures is second nature." "Indeed. Though observation and participation are different matters." He gestured toward the center of the pavilion, where several Valaxi had begun to arrange themselves in a circular formation. "The evening's cultural demonstration is about to begin. You'll find it illuminating." The lights dimmed, and the circle of Valaxi began a synchronized movement that fell somewhere between dance and ritual. As they moved, their skin began to glow, patterns of light flowing between them, connecting one to another in intricate designs. "They're communicating," Naira whispered, entranced. "Yes," Javik confirmed softly. "This is Shantavar, the ancient dance of connection. Before we developed written language, this was how knowledge was passed through generations." "The bioluminescence is magnificent," Naira said. "I had no idea Valaxi skin could generate such complex patterns." "It is one of our most guarded biological abilities," Javik explained. "The same compounds that are toxic to humans allow us this form of communication. The toxin is necessary for the electrical conductivity that enables the light patterns." Naira watched, mesmerized, as the dancers created living artwork with their bodies, stories told in light and movement that transcended verbal language. Despite not understanding the specific cultural context, she felt the emotional power of the performance. When it concluded, the pavilion erupted in a sound like rushing water, the Valaxi equivalent of applause, she realized. A tall, distinguished Valaxi approached them, his skin a deeper blue than most, with intricate permanent patterns etched into the ridges of his head. Javik immediately straightened further, inclining his head more deeply than Naira had seen before. "High Counselor Zorvek," Javik said formally. "May I present Dr. Naira Vandel of Earth?" "Dr. Vandel," the High Counselor said, his voice resonant and measured. "Your presence honors us. I trust Commander Javik has made adequate arrangements for your research." "More than adequate," Naira assured him. "The facilities are exceptional, and the access I've been granted to your genetic archives is unprecedented." "Our situation demands unprecedented measures," Zorvek replied. "The future of our species may well depend on insights that only an outside perspective can provide." Something in his tone made Naira wonder again about the political dimensions of her assignment. "I'll do my utmost to help," she said carefully. "I am certain you will." Zorvek's gaze was penetrating. "Perhaps you would join me for a moment. There is a view of our city I would like to share with you." Javik seemed about to protest but remained silent as Zorvek led Naira toward one of the pavilion's exterior platforms. As they stepped outside, the twin moons of Valaxi Prime cast silvery light across the water, transforming the city into a glittering dreamscape. "Beautiful, is it not?" Zorvek asked. "Breathtaking," Naira agreed sincerely. "All of this, our civilization, our achievements, faces extinction if we cannot solve the reproductive crisis," Zorvek said quietly. "Our population decline accelerates each year. Within 3 generations, we face potential societal collapse." Naira turned to him, surprised by his directness. "The situation is that dire?" "More than Commander Javik has likely conveyed," Zorvek confirmed. "He is protective of how information is shared. But I believe you should understand the full scope of what we face." "Why choose a human scientist?" Naira asked the question that had been nagging at her since accepting the assignment. "Surely there are other species without our biological incompatibility issues." Zorvek was silent for a moment, his gaze on the distant city. "There is a theory," he finally said, "that our reproductive crisis and our toxicity to humans are connected phenomena." "Connected? How?" The toxic compound, what we call zilithium, has been increasing in concentration in our population over generations. As it increases, fertility decreases. We suspect environmental factors, possibly something in our oceans, but we haven't identified the source. And the connection to humans? Your species has a unique physiological response to zilithium, Zorvek explained. Where other species merely find it unpleasant or mildly irritating, in humans it triggers catastrophic neurological collapse. By studying this extreme reaction, we hope to understand the compound's fundamental properties better. Naira processed this information rapidly. You're suggesting I use humans, myself, as a kind of biological control group? In the most careful, controlled manner possible, Zorvek assured her. Commander Javik has developed protocols that would allow safe comparative analysis without risk to you. Before Naira could respond, Javik himself appeared at the entrance to the platform. High Counselor, he said, his tone carefully neutral. The Andorian ambassador has arrived and is asking for you. Zorvek inclined his head. We will continue this discussion another time, Dr. Vandel. He departed, leaving Naira alone with Javik. What did he tell you? Javik asked immediately, moving closer than the customary distance, though still not dangerously so. That my research might be more personally involved than I was led to believe, Naira replied, studying his reaction. Javik's expression tightened. Zorvek is eager for results. He sometimes pushes boundaries. And you don't? I prefer caution, especially where your safety is concerned, Javik said firmly. Whatever protocols the High Counselor mentioned, they would only be implemented with extensive testing and your explicit consent. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other guests on the platform, drawn by the moonlit view. For the remainder of the evening, Naira found herself unable to have further private conversation with Javik, though she caught him watching her frequently from across the pavilion. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of intensive research. Naira divided her time between the Institute and the Underwater Archive, analyzing Valaxi genetic samples spanning centuries. Javik worked alongside her daily, their professional rapport developing into something resembling friendship despite the necessary physical barriers between them. It was during one late evening in the laboratory, when most other researchers had departed, that Naira made her first significant discovery. Javik, she called, excitement in her voice. Look at this comparative analysis. He moved to her workstation, careful to stand behind the transparent barrier as he studied the data on her screen. These are genetic markers from current and historical samples. Yes, focusing specifically on the genes that regulate zilithium production, Naira confirmed. There's a clear pattern of mutation over the past century, subtle at first, then accelerating. Javik's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the information. This suggests an evolutionary response to something in our environment. Exactly, Naira said. But the odd thing is, the mutation appears most prominently in coastal populations first, then spreads inland over generations. Something in the oceans, Javik murmured, echoing Zorvek's earlier suggestion. I'd need water samples from various time periods to confirm, Naira said. Do you maintain environmental archives as well as genetic ones? Yes, though not as extensive. Javik paused, then added, this is excellent work, Naira. A significant breakthrough. Their eyes met across the barrier, and something in his gaze made her heart beat faster. There was admiration there, certainly, but something else too, a connection that transcended their professional collaboration. We make a good team, she said softly. Indeed we do. His voice had dropped to match hers. Perhaps too good. What do you mean? Javik hesitated, then moved to adjust something on his wrist device. The barrier between them thinned slightly, still present but less visually obtrusive. I find myself increasingly aware of you, Naira Vandel, he said carefully. Not merely as a colleague, but as an individual. This is problematic. Naira felt heat rise to her cheeks. Because of the toxicity issue? Partially, he admitted. But also because of the political implications. Your research here is highly sensitive. Personal entanglements could compromise scientific objectivity. I'm a professional, Naira said, somewhat stiffly. I don't allow personal feelings to affect my work. Nor do I, typically, Javik replied. Yet here we are, discussing them nonetheless. The laboratory suddenly seemed very quiet, the soft hum of equipment the only sound as they regarded each other across the nearly invisible barrier, so close physically yet impossibly separated. What are we doing, Javik? Naira finally asked. Something dangerous, he answered simply. Something neither of us anticipated. Before either could say more, the laboratory doors slid open and Dr. Tevik entered, carrying data tablets. The moment broken, Javik stepped back, the barrier between them returning to its normal opacity. Dr. Vandel, Commander, Tevik said, apparently oblivious to the tension. I've completed the analysis you requested of the reproductive hormone samples. As they returned to the work at hand, Naira felt a new awareness of Javik's presence, the way he moved, the cadence of his speech, the intensity of his focus. What had begun as a purely scientific collaboration had evolved into something far more complicated, and potentially dangerous. Later that night, alone in her quarters, Naira found herself unable to sleep. The discovery about the Zilithium mutations was professionally exciting, but her personal thoughts kept returning to Javik's words, I find myself increasingly aware of you. She was developing feelings for an alien whose touch could kill her instantly. As a scientist, she recognized the absurdity. As a woman far from home on a strange world, she understood it all too well. What am I doing? She whispered to the darkness, knowing that whatever was growing between them could only lead to frustration, or worse. Yet when she finally drifted to sleep, it was Javik's gold-flecked eyes she saw in her dreams, and the impossible question that haunted her, how do you embrace someone you can never touch?